However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining to me tonight is Geraldine Orozco. And really fascinating backstory for Geraldine. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit. She is an alleged ET abduction experiencer. And she is one that is, I guess, a good general way to put it would be a soul searcher. And so we'll get some soul searching techniques and answers from her a little bit later. Open lines tonight, Paranormal Radio app. If you want to find out about our guests, you can just ask her directly in the last 30 minutes. And that is the Paranormal Radio app number 855-472-5483 or 85KGRA live. And of course, follow us on Facebook, Paranormal Now Radio, Twitter at Paranormal_Now, and on Instagram, Paranormal Now. And now I want to remind you that all of these shows, Paranormal Now, can be found on Spreaker. You can find them after the show on KGR Ray's Spreaker channel or Paranormal Now Spreaker channel. It's very easily accessible. Also, the video versions of this show, if you are those that are listening and not watching, you can find them on YouTube. That's KGR Radio on YouTube. And I repost them later on Paranormal Pop as well. And of course, streaming directly to Facebook. And I guess we're not doing Twitch. Bill had just told me because there was just an enormous amount of trolling that was going on. And I don't know. Maybe we can try that again at some point, or maybe we just gave up on that. Because, you know, what we talk about, like, I get it. You know, there's people who tune in to these things at random and they're like, what in the world are these people talking about? You know, and that's fine. You know, that's why we have our community. You know, and also, you know, these subjects, especially what we'll be talking about tonight, I think they touch on a place inside people that actually scares them. And I'm not saying this in a sort of high and mighty sort of way, that we're braver or anything like that. But I think that the paranormal challenges you spiritually, and it asks you to ask questions about the very reality that you live in. And it's not always easy once you start going down the rabbit hole. Now, of course, Bill and I were chatting a little bit before, Bill Skywatcher, our producer. You have to be careful about that rabbit hole because it is easy to get swayed by something that may not be true, but also whatever philosophy or belief system someone presents to you. They may be leading with an ulterior motive that, you know, their intention is to string you along. So just be careful. Just be careful out there. There's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good work. And there are also a lot of charlatans as well. So, again, keep the good paranormal faith, as it were, and listen to tonight's show because I think you'll get something really interesting out of it. Okay, quick reminder to call in the last half an hour, Paranormal Radio app, line 85KGRA live. And now I'm bringing on Geraldine Orozco, provides insight as to how DNA is the currency of the past, present, and future, and how consciousness plays an important role. A life-changing contact experience in 2013 resulted in the activation of psychic abilities. In 2017, she underwent several hypnotic regressions with vetted therapists. Regressions uncovered a lifelong history of abduction and participation in human hybridization, with 24 hybrid children as the result. Now, she is dedicated to the dissemination of knowledge of hybridization programs and the correction of the commonly held dogma of the human genetic timeline. Just give you a moment to process that. Historical record and human structure. Geraldine is owner of Bay Area Meditation in San Francisco, California, which specializes in corporate wellness programs for Silicon Valley tech giants, including Google, Facebook, Instagram, Proceps, biorobotics, and more. She facilitates DNA reprogramming internationally, is a speaker, radio host, and is currently writing her book, DNA Origins of the Hybridization Program. Geraldine Orozco, welcome so much to Paranormal Now. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's my pleasure as well. So I had to lead in a little bit with a warm-up for those who may be on the skeptical side of things. And I think right off the bat, let's just talk about the fact that in the seeding, the documentary Extraordinary the Seeding, you share a very traumatic, I would say, anyone who had this kind of experience, no matter how they came out of it, positive or negative, it has to be somewhat traumatic, right? How was it for you? What was the experience like emotionally for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you so much for asking that. Really, it should have been traumatic. It should have been it could have even been a bit damaging for me at some point, to a point where I would have gotten stuck. And there was a moment where I kind of checked in with myself to kind of see, like, what exactly are we talking about here? And how do I feel about all of this? But the way I came into this was a very interesting way. It was I kind of prepared in a way without knowing, to have a really strong spiritual foundation, or at least an awareness of myself as not just being a physical being, in fact, an interdimensional being per se. And so when I realized that, this is a process that kind of began in 2009, 2008, when I first began to have interest in shamanic healing work. Pranic and quantum energy healing was kind of the first time when I started getting into all of this. And after the death of my partner, that's when it kind of took me into questioning life, the purpose of life, why we have such suffering. And I started to realize a lot of us were experiencing suffering in the world. And it started to make me kind of want to go deeper. I couldn't find my answers through religion, and I've been through many different religions trying to investigate, learn. I was very well raised in a family that, I was taken through from a Catholic all-girls private school, to then being taught about Buddhism, Hinduism, Muslim religion, many different religions. I had the opportunity to kind of not only experience firsthand, but learn about that at a very young age. So it kind of set up this tone for my life to kind of question things. And I think at the point where I came into adolescence and young adulthood, I started to kind of part ways with those teachings and kind of look for my own answers. So when I had these traumatic experiences early on, they really made me question if I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing in my life. I have the job, I have the education, I'm playing the roles that I'm supposed to be playing, yet things are not working out. So it really took me into this deep dive. And so what I realized is that when I start peeling those emotional layers and the blockages that I started to realize I was having, because I realized my identity is not even what I agree with. I'm just a product of my society, my family, everything that's been running in my culture, even religion, and how it's affected my family. I realized I'm a product of that. So who was really Geraldine, and why was she still experiencing so much suffering? So all of that kind of took me into a really deep rabbit hole of the spiritual world first. And when I went down that way, I was met with this concept of interdimensionality. Okay, so when I had my experience in 2013 of contact, and I was literally consciously awake, taken out of my bedroom and into this craft where I'm being introduced to hybrid children. That was the beginning for me of a whole new set of questions that kind of took things on a different level. And I think that questioning for many years, I was suppressing the information. Okay, right. I didn't want to tell anyone what happened to me. I was ashamed of it. I myself became very skeptical about many things. I didn't even believe in angels. I was very skeptical of God, or the concept of God, of religions, of all these things. I was pulling away for many years trying to find my answer. So as I dove deeper to question this interdimensional phenomena, for me, after that experience, it opened up this ability, the psychic ability, to see the multidimensional body. And I couldn't understand how to explain that to someone. How can you explain to someone, hey, I just got abducted by aliens and now I have psychic abilities from one day to the next? So, it was things that I had to quickly adapt to. And it took years from that moment in 2013 up until 2016, 17, when I got my regressions, that everything started to go out. And I went through existential crisis, Alan. I did, because in the sessions, I'm kind of reliving these experiences, and they were very traumatic. I mean, things, before that moment, I never uttered the word alien before, these reptilians, like all of these concepts that somebody that is in the field is familiar with, but somebody that's not in the field, right? I was an interior designer. I was an event planner. That was my company for 10 years. So I was extremely far away from any of these ideas, so it was a quick learning curve. And if it wasn't for my ability to feel comfortable with my own interdimensionality, the parts of myself that I felt shame for, unseen parts of myself that we're trained, we're kind of taught to feel ashamed of, even our emotions, for example. I think that work kind of laid a really strong foundation for when I came across these experiences. It wasn't so, destructive of an illusion. I kind of went out of the illusion of what reality is supposed to be, and that's where the questions started to come in.
Yeah. So so you had this experience in the actual moment. How did you feel from what you recall?
Yeah, absolutely. The abduction was completely wide awake conscious. So everything from the beginning to the end was very vivid. Okay. At first, when I saw the light in the room, I woke up trying to figure out what that light was, and I thought it was a car or something that was trying to shine their light. I thought someone was trying to break into my house. I got scared, so I waited for a little bit. It didn't go away. I looked down at my phone. It was exactly 3:33 in the morning, and I had never before that moment seen consecutive numbers or really looked into the idea that they're special in any way. But it was interesting to see that. And I get out of my bed and I go to the window. And as I'm looking through the blinds, the light gets massively, massively bright. And I'm not able to see where the origin is. And next thing I know, my entire body goes paralyzes. I can't move. And I'm being drawn out of the bedroom, out of the window, out of the wall, through the wall, into this above my garage, basically, and taken in with 6 other grays that are basically controlling my emotions. Like I'm panicking and wanting to scream, to yell, and they immediately remove that emotion from my body and say, calm, So the communication is telepathic.
Mm-hmm. So communication, is it more like a suggestion, or do they just literally make it happen?
They make it happen.
Okay.
They make it happen. And it's interesting because before that moment, you've never experienced telepathic communication. It really feels invasive, like someone is in your mind speaking to you, and you for a moment you get confused. You question, is that your own communication, or is that something I'm getting from outside of me? And as you're listening and feeling what they're saying, your body changes. So from one moment, I'm in a state of panic, absolute wanting to run away, jump, whatever. I couldn't think of what to do in that moment, to the next moment feeling completely at peace, okay, and not questioning what's happening in that moment, and then being taken into the craft. And everything is extremely vivid, the kind of craft, what it looks like. I'm seeing the floor within the craft, what it looks like. I'm seeing the structure of the craft, and their technology is so magnificently advanced that they are able to manipulate what you're seeing in there, and it looks almost as if you're in this incredibly advanced holographic projection. It's 3D experiential holographic projection. Right. And so they moved the space around you. I was shown my aunt, who later on I found out that exact same night had the contact experience as well. Mm-hmm. So actually my whole family has had contact. And the most impactful of that was the meeting the children.
Right. And that has to be an emotional hit, right? I mean, just I can imagine finding out that you have all these children. It's almost like if you are a parent, right, and your children are taken away from you, that would be very traumatizing. Now, in this case, I guess you're discovering that you actually have children and realizing that they were taken away from you at the same time.
Exactly. And it is very shocking because, I'm not a mother on this earth. So, but when you see a child, not only do you see the child, but you see yourself in the child.
Mm-hmm.
That was it was mind blowing, to recognize even if they look unique. Sorry, Alan, you were going to ask something.
No, go ahead.
It just seems that even though their faces are unique, they have these enlarged eyes, very frail, thin bodies, completely different. You can tell that they are a mixture of genetics of some sort. They don't look like regular human children. Okay. But just the fact that you're looking at them and connecting with them, the communication that happens with them is telepathic. So immediately they are transferring emotions, thoughts, and all of a sudden memories of past experiences with them started to come up. So times where I had been with them on craft, memories of holding them in my arms, and I began to feel so confused because I was like, how is this possible? I don't remember any of this. How come no one ever told me that I have children? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to stay here? And my thinking was, I probably am supposed to stay here, because why would they show them to me? So it was an incredibly emotional moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed when we're preparing for this show and looking at your page, there are quite a few people out there that identify with your experience.
And that's, yes. And that's really the most incredible part, because in that moment, I thought I was really a one-off, and that's what made speaking about it so difficult, because it was like, okay, just talking about ET contact is already difficult, but talking about you having children is like a whole nother level. I mean, think the implications of what has to happen for that to even occur, or even where your psychology has to be at that moment for you to think about that as a possibility, obviously is something that people will question. And it is a very important thing that we do need to talk about, because if hundreds and thousands of women are experiencing such a thing, and we're not just talking about memories or dreams, we're talking about physical things that are happening to them, miscarriages, which then I started to recognize that the miscarriages in my medical history that I had was exactly parallel with all these experiences that I was recounting in my regression. Right. So it took things to a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, the other experiencers have shared a similar experience. Mm-hmm. And I forget the other woman in the documentary had a very particularly difficult time with her relationship because of that. I guess the argument on the skeptical side is you had trauma, right? With your trying to process a miscarriage or the inability to have children, and your mind is sort of just conjuring up dreams, and then you are subscribing to those dreams as reality to use as a coping method. What's your response to that?
Yeah, and I can totally see how that's a possibility. The thing that takes that possibility out now of question is the other parts of these events that are so important. For me, for example, I've never really wanted to have children like that. Number one, okay. Number two, this kind of wanting to have children, actually becoming pregnant, occurred when I wasn't even partnered. So I didn't have a sexual contact, and then I became pregnant, and then it resulted in a miscarriage. And the other part is the times that I did have the miscarriage, it was in combination with other medical problems and complications that occurred. I mean, I got severely sick with an unknown amoeba, according to my doctor, that he couldn't identify. I became allergic to a lot of medications, allergic to antibiotics. I couldn't take anything. To this day, I don't take anything, not even aspirin. And that seems to be a common thing around contactees, which is interesting because, why would we all have such sensitivity? And so I understand why that is now based on my experience. But, going back at the number of events that have to happen surrounding that kind of experience, it really shows us that it's more than just a psychosis. I mean, we would really have to be making up a whole series of life events and proof, in a sense. I mean, at the age of 16, they identified cysts, ovarian cysts that were highly advanced, that were like something of the age of somebody that had already had children at a older age. So those kinds of things, and of course you got to keep in mind, I never had a fascination with ETs. Never even crossed my mind the idea of having intercourse with an extraterrestrial. I mean, those kinds of things would never cross my mind. And so the idea that you can link the two at any time was out of the question, So that would be my response. I mean, it would be different if it was someone that has had a fascination with aliens all their life and then now fantasizes that kind of a thing. And, you also have to question their state. Like, why do they have such a fascination for ETs and all that stuff? That's a whole nother...
I question my state every day, Geraldine.
Well,
I'm going to hold it right there. We're going to go to a quick break. But we'll come back on the other side. There's so much more to your story to tell, but of course, the work that you do is really important as well. So I want everyone to stay tuned. We're going to get metaphysical on the other side. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. We'll see you on the flip side.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Lost in a bad way, I've gotta let you go. You're supposed to be so close to me, I'm mostly it goes to me, yeah. And if you chose to see the most in me, you'd hopefully get...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Alan B. Smith. Joining me tonight is Geraldine Orozco. And taking us out of the break was music by Septembrio. If you want to find out more about Septembrio, just go to Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. So Michael Hill from Septembrio, they let us use their music freely. So this is not an ad. We don't advertise for them. But if you do want to go and support them, I would really appreciate that. Because their music is really a perfect fit for this program. And I really appreciate those guys very much. So Geraldine and I were talking about her experience. So Geraldine, you kind of left it off with having sexual experience. Is that correct? Or is that like a misinterpretation?
No, we were talking about the fact that when I became pregnant, I wasn't, a couple of those times I actually was not partnered with anyone. So trying to look at this phenomena from a whole different perspective, right? Because a lot of people think, and what the gynecologist would say when women go and visit is, okay, well, you have a blighted ovum, or you created this out of stress, out of anxiety, all of these things that could result in these kinds of false pregnancies, false positives, which really, they shouldn't be so popular. They shouldn't happen so often. So it was very interesting to experience that. But again, my connection was never to think about extraterrestrial contact being involved in that. Right. So when I went through the regression and I actually relived the actual experiences, I went back to the age of 5 years old when I had the first experience. I started to realize that the memories that I had in my mind that were memories that I couldn't get out of my mind were things that I was really suppressing from those experiences. So at the age of 5, the age of 16, when I was in South American Bolivia, at the age of 24, so on and so forth, many other experiences where this happened. So it really is something that affected my entire life, in such a way. And it wasn't until the regression that I realized what was happening.
Right. So I think that's the question everybody has, is that, is this like something that was artificial insemination, or, was it something else? Because there was that discussion about projecting an image, right, of something else. So that, I see, that's why for me in the beginning I said it would have to be, I would imagine it to be traumatizing, because even if it in the end, like for instance, we go out and we essentially abduct animals from the wild, right? And we do these tests and do all these things on them, and it's for their own good, for the future of their species. We're trying to learn and understand, but from their perspective, it's not a positive experience by any means. So how do you juxtapose, or how do you reconcile those two, the treatment and the outcome?
There's a couple different ways to look at this, and I've gone through my own personal process, right? When I first heard the regression that I was experiencing having insemination occur, there's many different ways that this is done. It's mechanical, and sometimes it's actual intercourse that occurs in order to create an insemination, an event. Mm-hmm. And what I realized and questioned is, why do they create these scenarios where there's this kind of intercourse being played out? Because, they have the technology. It's not like you need to have that whole scenario played out. They can easily inseminate you, and you can, have this go through the gestation process and the extraction normally. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that there's something about the intercourse, and it really speaks to the kind of program that's running the specific agenda that's being carried out. So here's what I mean. I'm a part of 4 different hybridization programs, right? One of them is a terrestrial program. One of them is a draconian program. One of them is a reptilian program. Another one is like a humanoid, you can call them a kind of Pleiadian program. And so each one of those carries out this kind of agenda in a different way. Their mode of insemination, of implantation, the technology they're using is slightly different. The way that they do things, the way that they extract the fetus, the way that they gestate, and what they're going to use the fetus is all going to be different based on their agenda. What is the same is that they're still using your genetic material in order to create another living organism. So the question is, why is that happening? And so, but we'll get to that. The thing that's interesting here, and what you were asking about, is why do they create these scenarios when there is intercourse? A lot of these experiences that are done with some of these beings, and I've heard from both sides. Some women and men claim that to have incredibly pleasurable experiences where it's completely fine. Mm-hmm. They feel like they were respected and everything was perfect. Other experiences, they do feel that they were violated somehow. And even the woman in the film, one of our other experiencers, April, who literally experienced having a very violent experience with one of those reptilians. And those are cases that are also known. Some people experience that. And I believe that it is, when there's intercourse, the moment of insemination and the intention of that insemination, how it occurs, will seed a vibrational imprint into the fetus that's being created. And so it literally designs the intention of that life form. So whatever it's being made for requires that kind of creation, or that kind of intention at that moment of creating. And I've kind of seen that because the way that they manage these kinds of programs later on down the road, when the children are groomed in these kinds of crafts that are kind of like Their crafts where the children are kept, basically raised. There's other genetic modifications that are occurring there. It's very interesting. The children will reach only a certain age. I kind of tend to believe almost as if the children are just like vessels to hold on to the essence of the genetic material or the soul that is holding on to that child. And then we go into other parts of it. But it can be very traumatizing for women and men. Both of them have experienced that. I hear from men that also, have these images of these gorgeous women, that is having intercourse with them. And next thing you know, they see something completely different. That screen image is removed. And then they are completely traumatized, not just for that moment, but for life, because now they have a hard time becoming intimate with anyone. There's this feeling of mistrust. And where it starts to come into the physical is like, that's not just a dream, right? You can't have so much trauma from this dream. Now, the person wakes up, they have marks on their body. There's, bodily fluids that are as a result of that. And so this is when things start to get really real. And so you begin to question, okay, why aren't we talking about this, as whether it's some kind of incredibly complex psychosis, or it's actually something that's really happening to everyone. What's occurring there? That's the question.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Dreams are only so powerful, and I've had dreams where, that the fear of the dream, the if it's a nightmare and it was a traumatic experience, or if it was a dream about like a hangover, right? Something like that. I could actually feel it in my body the next day, but my mind still knew that was just my dream, even though there was this residual effect. It wasn't the same as actually having a hangover. It was just similar. There's a sensation, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking in terms of how do you deal with people who would criticize you, and say, oh, she's a liar, blah, blah, blah. These people or they just need help. Kathleen, have you spoken to Kathleen Martin at all?
I actually just recently connected with her, but no, we haven't really spoken. I've seen her at many conferences before.
Okay.
But yeah, she's wonderful. I know she's a contactee. Because of the purpose of writing the book right now, I'm not hearing or listening to anyone else's contact experience, just because, the mind is very impressionable. And so when you keep these very impactful experiences, to keep the purity of them, I try not to listen to anyone else, but I know that she is a very important person for the field and for the research of the phenomena. So definitely, yes.
Yeah. So it's not when they say that there's like this projection of something, right? And I guess that gets the person in a certain state of mind to help with the. I'm trying to be as clean as possible, but yes. So there's no physical contact, right? Actual physical contact.
Oh yes, there definitely is physical contact. I mean, for example, in my experience, it was absolutely physical. And I had, marks the next day on my body as a result of that. Implants that were put into the body, okay? And the thing is, once you get regression, now you kind of have ripped that veil open. So your mind is more, ready to store those memories of those events. So the contact that I've had from 2017 until now have been very much vivid, real, conscious, and physical. And it's no longer like a dream. And a lot of people do experience that.
But that includes the artificial insemination process as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I guess that's scarier, because that means they are biologically, genitalia are very similar to us. So
yes.
How does that, like that makes you wonder, are we related?
Well, that's an incredible question to take it that way, and that really does show us anatomically. I mean, the origin. I mean, just the laws of the universe of creation are basic. It's the feminine, masculine unite in order to create life.
Yeah.
And so, whether anatomically, however that's created, I think they have they don't have the ability to procreate the way we do. Okay. So that kind of changes. And I really feel like it's artificial intelligence really that is being created specifically for these programs of hybridization. I don't believe that it's an organic intelligence really all the way. And the reason why I say that is because the way that we have evolved since the origin of life on this planet has been very interesting. One of the things that I've seen is that the origin of life of this entire universe began with these beings that kind of come in, and I mean we see this historically in some text in ancient writings about how extraterrestrials are they're merging with humans in order to create the human race. And so when we look at how this has evolved, it looks like that those bloodlines have mixed literally to create all of the living beings on this planet. We were literally descendants from these bloodlines. It's very interesting during my research, going back to those original bloodlines, seeing all of the parallels in the families throughout history that have been very heavily preserved. I mean, they would only marry within their bloodline, and from there would evolve, branch out to other families that would then go create entire, nations. Our entire world is populated as a result. Just you and I, 2,000 years ago, we have someone in common. We have a relative. So there's definitely an origin point to the evolution of us. And the question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Who designed us anatomically to create this life? And I believe that what it kind of shows us is that this human body is really one of the most advanced biotechnologies. I mean, we in our current science, we're trying to mimic the human body, and we're still learning about possible technology by looking at how the body works, how it functions. Mm-hmm. So I think that the technology that's available to us within the physical body is that next step. And right. These interdimensional beings are basically intelligence that has gone, beyond that. They are beyond just this little physical shell.
Yeah. So these encounters that you have with ETs, you think are interdimensional, or are interdimensional?
Yes, well, definitely it's interdimensional. And the reason why is because we live in that 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional plane, right? So anytime that you're in contact with this kind of beings, even though they are physical, they are manifesting themselves as physical in order to meet and match us on a vibrational frequency so that we can interact. Which is very interesting because a lot of times, since the beginning of time, people are seeing angels or these beings that are descending from the sky, or these gods. That was their way of saying, of depicting these kinds of connections that we have with this unseen world. But really, it's a shift in frequency. A lot of contactees, after their contactee experience, they in their bodies, they activate a lot of psychic abilities. And I think what happens is that because of that interaction that's happening with myself, for example, just the fact that I was in the craft, everything is like a vibrational frequency. There's nothing that's actually solid there, even though you are there. Mm-hmm. The craft I can see is moving, it's vibrating. I can even see through the craft. I can see the stars outside of the craft that I'm in. I can see the beings, I can feel them. It's a technology that transcends all physical limitation. So that kind of, and that would put our technology and our understanding of physics completely into question. It would throw everything out the door. Mm-hmm. The closest we've been able to reach that explanation is by looking at quantum physics and all of these ideas of how matter is non-physical, and study that science. And then we're just getting there. So that's why I think they're interdimensional.
Yeah, I think you're not far off the mark at all, because it's not often, it's not rare to hear in the news some new observation in the universe or a galaxy far away that calls into question physics as we know it. So physicists are tweaking their theories as time goes on because they learn more. And they're only studying really from what technology we have that can measure light in certain frequencies, matter as far down as we can see it, energy as far down as we can see it, but that doesn't mean we've reached the limits of all those things. So I wonder, what our science will be 50 plus years from now. It must be different.
It will. I mean, I also, we put into question a lot of other programs in technology that we're yet to be introduced to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what interests me a lot about talking to other experiencers is the kind of technology that they come in contact with when they are on craft is really something that you can't make up. I mean, I've met some experiencers that they can, in detail, because they're mechanical engineers, they can explain how this technology is working. I mean, how does someone just come up with things like that? We go back to look at Tesla, for example, with his incredible innovations that were so far beyond his time. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of inspiration that we're looking at from some of these experiencers that are bringing new technology. They're breaking those limitations of what we thought was possible. So that's also a very interesting aspect of the phenomena of ET contact, I think.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, I've put the website to hybridmother.com in the comments section. So go please check that out. And so you have a couple of websites. Where would you like, Geraldine, people to go to find out more about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys are looking to get a DNA reprogramming with me, you can visit my website, GeraldineOrozco.com or BayAreaMeditation.com. And you can also visit my YouTube channel, which I have a lot of content at Geraldine Orozco. You can find me there. And if you are a hybrid parent or an experiencer that's looking for support, I offer hypnotherapy and also healing and integration for trauma of contact. You guys can reach me at hybridmother.com. So I'm really happy to assist with that.
And so let's continue with that, because how do you let's do a question here first before I ask mine. And that is from Earth Radio. Do you think you were visited before the time you can remember? You mentioned age 13. Was there any visits before that?
Yes, great question. So the first contact happened when I was 5 years old. And there was a memory that for some reason I could never get out of my mind. And it was a memory of myself going into my parents' bedroom and seeing a huge light that I saw over a swimming pool. And I kept thinking throughout, growing up, how come that memory always comes up? I don't even know why. Nothing significant happened. But that was the very first time that I was taken. And it was the first time that I was implanted with technology in the back of the uterine wall to monitor the body. So it's very interesting. Even the small little traumas and fears that I've had as an individual growing up all correlated to those events, and they finally made sense. They started to make sense why I had those feelings about certain things, odd, random things. Yeah. And later on, at the age of 16, which was the first time when I was inseminated, and then I lived in South America for a couple of years during high school. So those events, and it was before I even understood what sex was, really. I was kind of a late bloomer in that sense. I didn't understand until much later. But it was the introduction to this whole sensation, of creation, of life force, of coming into this feminine self. Mm-hmm. And then later on, the thing is that this process is like this, okay? It starts with implantation. So the visitation, it's a series of visitations, the implantation, the insemination, then the gestation process, then the extraction, and then sometimes the presentation, okay? And so this is usually what men and women will experience. It's a series of events. So sometimes they will remember one of those memories, and it'll be something that can be very insignificant. It could be a vision of being in some kind of completely clinical space where you're being examined or something like that. It can start with just something simple like that. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that a lot of women that I've spoken to, and men here in the Bay Area, for example, they tell me, I never thought about aliens before, but I have this feeling about this memory that I keep getting about being in a clinical space, and these things are happening to me. I don't understand. I've never seen a movie, that could, it leave that impression in my mind,
Mhm.
or had trauma of surgery or anything like that. So then when you take them into regression, you kind of start to dive into those memories and you open them up and you see what's there. And it's interesting, people, not everyone, of course, this doesn't happen to everyone, but some people have had this kind of experience, and the process of it is always the same. It's always quite similar. There's a little changes here and there, but the process is quite similar.
Yeah, I'm going to ask another question from the comment section as well. And this one is, in any of your abductions, have you ever had an OBE during the event with the entities? An out-of-body experience?
That's a very interesting question. I have not. My experiences on craft were fully, in my body. And I think that during the time of that experience, it was so traumatic, that really I was just fully in the body. And, the most traumatizing experiences were with my experiences with these beings that they call draconian, which are these massive, beings that look kind of reptilian. And those were always the less pleasant experiences. Other experiences later with other more humanoid were different. It was a different sensation. Okay.
Mhm.
And then the most traumatic of all of them really was the terrestrial program, which I was, taken out of an Airbnb at a conference into an underground base. So there is a replication. There is a cloning of some sort, a hybridization program, different, that is being run also by the government, which is also very interesting. And I dare say that only because I experienced it full hand. I wouldn't talk about something I didn't experience. So these experiences are very much in the body. You're not leaving your body, and you're not dreaming about them. That's what makes them unique.
Right. So that would mean that this government group, agency, what have you, would have technology to be able to do this clandestinely. That's kind of scary unto itself.
Yeah.
Are they getting it from the interdimensional beings, or?
Right, and that's a great question, because when I went into it, my question was, who's running this program?
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
is it the government? And so what I found out, and I write about this in my book, is that it's the nuclear warfare, psychological and nuclear defense department of the United States that is running this program. So, but we're talking about levels of the government that are so high up that it doesn't matter how much research you do, and trust me, tried, you will not be able to find the links to this.
Well, are they really? Is it really the government, or is it a secret access program that is kind of running rogue?
Right. Well, I think that it's something that goes even further above the government. We're talking about some control system that's above just the United States. We're talking about a global kind of organization that kind of runs some of these things. Okay. I go really deep into all of these in the conferences when I talk about how our systems are so managed by a very small group of people and individuals that 107 companies, 47 companies are running all of the companies in the entire world, and those are owned by a very small group of people. And so this is where we start talking about those genetic lineages and those family lines that seem to be carrying out some of these programs specifically in a certain way. So I don't believe that this technology is foreign to us. I think that it's evolved with us since the origin of life seeding on this planet. I think that what we are aware of in terms of what we know is available to us in technology and mainstream is extremely controlled, extremely, hidden. So we're just getting like drops of information. We're getting drops of the advance in our science and our physics, what is widely known. You really have to do a lot of research. You have to look at the clinical papers and real research that is not going to be mainstream. That's where you find the real information, and that's where some of these concepts start to make sense, I think.
And I have to thank you for your amazing camera. because it's so nice to have someone with a really clear camera. It's fantastic.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad that works. Good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So we're going to go to our second break, and when we get back on the other side, we have a lot of questions, but we'll start talking about how we carry on, how do we evolve as spirits. And the last question I will leave with Geraldine until we come on the other side, related to her ET abduction experiences, are these beings more masculine or feminine in their energy? Which way do they lean? And are they part of some universal balance? This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. We'll see you on the other side.
Hearts race to fight the future. Convinced of efforts to deceive.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
I try to capture how I feel and tell you the whole truth, but there's too much to be said, so I just leave you small clues. But now I'm bearing my soul, and my soul loves you. Tell me last things. Tell me last things. Tell me last things.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. With me is Geraldine Orozco. We will continue our conversation, but as a friendly reminder, please check out Septembrio with a Y.com. They bring us our bumper music every week. Really good people. And yeah, I can't say too much right now, but I did mention that I won't be producing as much content for the YouTube channel. That's because I'll be focusing on a new project, a much bigger project that I'll be working on over probably the next year plus. And that will include some of the music from Septembrio, which I'm really, really excited about. It's going to be hopefully a little uplifting, emotionally moving, but we'll see how it turns out. If you want to ask your questions of Geraldine later in this hour, you can call 855-472-5483 or 85-KGRA Live. That's the Paranormal Radio app hotline, 855-472-5483. So, Geraldine, what are these ETs like in regard to, I guess, their place in the universe? You know, do they have a feminine, masculine energy? You know, what's behind the descriptive of what they look like?
Mm-hmm. I really love that you asked that question, because not very many people do. And what I feel really is important about my journey and why I chose to speak about it and share my experiences is really to take people to the next level of looking at this, not to get stuck in the idea of suffering or being victims of this phenomena or what's occurring on Earth and off Earth, right? What I would like is to invite people to go and look at the bigger picture. You know, what's happening that makes the human such valuable, important substance in order for them to be utilized in genetic, procreation. So there's something that the human has that is unique to them. And what I believe is that our bodies are multidimensional in a sense where even our DNA is a holographic storage system of information that is so complex that we are just beginning to understand what it's all about. And I think that when we start to study, and these are new studies, right, in understanding what DNA is, what we've realized about the body is that the human body doesn't store information physically. The brain is not holding on to certain information or memories in certain parts. It's actually a network of information. It's holographic. The function of storing information is holographic, not just for the brain, but the entire body. There was a test done on rats that are trained to go down a maze, and even if they took out 80-90% of the brain, they still remembered how to go down that maze, although stumbling. So what that allows us to understand is that the storage system of the body is far more complex. Just in 1 teaspoon of DNA, you can store the information of the entire world history. So what are we storing in our bodies? This really goes to a question, why is this human body? And what I think is that when the soul comes into the human body, it is attaching to 2 different networks. It's attaching to DNA, which is your ancestral lineage that goes down your mother's line, your father's lineage, right? And the other part is it connects to this little physical shell, but also the multidimensional aspect. All of that information that is being brought down from that soul is being organized in the body in what we know as chakras. Okay, we hear them as chakras, these vortices of energy. But these vortices of energy are interconnected with the endocrine system. They manage all the major organs in the body. They manage how we process information. The majority of our communication is 75% non-physical, non-verbal, I should say. So that means that the way we communicate, how they're communicating telepathically, for example, it's just a part of us that we've yet to access, right? We have our 5 senses, but we also have the intuitive aspect of ourselves, which taps into the non-physical communication, non-verbal communication. That we must learn to develop. It's a part of the technology of the body. So why do I talk about this? Because when DNA is being taken from a human, you're taking more than just what they look like, their family lineage. You're taking information of their entire ancestral origin, their entire evolutionary process, not just of that lineage, but the entire universe. Because the history of the universe is imprinted at a molecular level within all of us. We all have, that saying, we're made of stardust. That's an actual fact. We actually have molecules of aspects of ourselves that are a product of this entire universe. And so what this information is holding is also connected to the non-physical aspect of ourselves. Okay, so the non-physical would be the soul, for example. It is that life force, the thread and let's say the engine of life that keeps this human little shell moving, is that soul. Okay, so it is in a way it's spliced and then to create life. And these programs are massive. Okay, when you are on a hybridization craft, you're going to be seeing infinite rows of these hybridization tanks. And I could say the same for the terrestrial program. So there is something that's occurring here on the larger picture, which is sustaining a certain kind of life form. Right. And what we've seen historically in the world is that there seems to be a certain accumulation of knowledge, an advancement of technology, and then there seems to be a reset that occurs at a certain point. And we see these cyclical patterns in our evolution historically on planet Earth, but we're also seeing it internally within our physics, within how we are evolving also, okay? How the human body has evolved as well. So it's very interesting. So it looks like we reach a certain point of that technology and then everything begins to change. So the question is, what are they maintaining, and how are these societies being created in order to create this a certain speed of evolution or controlled evolution during those times? I believe that the soul is utilized to create these hybrids, for example, which later on are inserted back into the human timeline. And we can look at the work of Mary Rodwell, if some of you might know her, who studies hybrids, actual children that are at the age of 5, talking about advanced physics. They can map out the universe for you. These are advanced beings that have an incredible connection to the cosmos somehow, and it's thousands of them around the world. So they claim to have connections with extraterrestrial beings.
Is that the indigo children, or?
I'm sorry?
Are those indigo children?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So we know them as we categorize them as these indigo rainbow children, which kind of come in as different waves of consciousness. Okay, they kind of like different aspects of their consciousness have been somehow developed or advanced. So it's really interesting that we're kind of seeing them brought back into the timeline. And the question is, for what purpose? If you look at the bigger picture, what we're experiencing, and since the origin of life on this planet, we've seen an evolution of consciousness. But what I believe is happening is that these consciousness, since the story of Sophia that has bred life into, like the Book of Enoch, for example, it's bred life into these beings that have then given away their creative power, their creative life force. This is kind of what's happened. And we see that model even within us as humans. Anytime that we reject our consciousness and we believe that we are individual, separate from a whole, we come into this kind of dynamic of a parasitic consciousness. So what I feel is that the evolution of these beings that have created the original universe and then kind of genetically created all of the races that we know of, right? The reptilians, draconians, you name it, right? All of these races, including the human race, are all genetically modified. And they've been genetically modified in a way in order to sustain aspects of the soul, of that running source energy or that life force that is creating them. So I believe that we humans are unique in a sense because these bodies are incredibly advanced technology that is storing all of that information and it's being utilized for that. Now, you asked about polarity, about the feminine, masculine energy. Are they more masculine? In a sense, I would say that when we reject our consciousness, we're pulling away from the ability of creation. And I think anytime that we pull away from that ability to create, we come into a state of being parasitic. So needing from something outside of us in order to create or to even survive. So I think that these beings are a representation of that. And we have the opportunity during this small lifetime on this planet to live out either role. Do I think it's right or wrong? No, I don't. I don't think either is right or wrong. I think that we are all an expression of polarity. And, and I think that understanding really helped me process my trauma because I understood that when I come into this physical body, this doesn't belong to me, this little shell that I'm in. I mean, we are infinite consciousness. We are that soul that is the thread of life. That's what's important. And so whatever we choose to experience, that's it. That's it. It's a choice of what we're experiencing, I believe. So it kind of helps you go above the idea of these extraterrestrials like at war with the human race or even at consciousness. We're just talking about a manipulation of that consciousness if you are unaware, if you're not aware, if you choose to neglect your own awareness, that's when things start to get kind of funny. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean manipulation of consciousness?
Well, anytime that you believe that you are helpless, that you are a victim, that you are powerless, you are adopting beliefs that are untrue inherently in your design. Okay. And I mean, we look at nature to understand what's balance, what's creation. Everything in nature is exact. It functions like a perfect mathematical equation. You are an expression exactly the same as that natural expression. You're an exact creation of that mathematical expression. And so everything in you and everything you're experiencing is a result of these cause and effect, right? That's just the way that we are relating to one another in this experience. Therefore, if you choose to continue believing that you're a victim of what's happening, negating that you have the ability to change or transform those experiences, regardless of how traumatic and difficult it is. And trust me, I work with trauma every single day. We are falling into a belief that is untrue and that can change. So that's what I do in my work is I help people understand, remind, in a sense, guide them, hold space for them to recognize once again their consciousness, their awareness, their ability to be aware of themselves and the power that we have, which is, it's in our blueprint, it's in our DNA. It's just external programs and the illusion of separation or the compartmentalized society, which is built specifically to make you feel that way. So I think that we kind of need to become aware of that. And I think more of us are becoming aware of that just by looking at current events that are happening around us today.
Yeah, you say it's built. Did that just sort of evolve that way, or there are people pulling strings and trying to push things or keep things that way?
You know, I think that it's something that, in a sense, we understood, if you understood how the body works, how it functions, how we are multidimensional, how we store information, how experiences and trauma affect the body and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at how we have evolved since the origin historically. To me, I believe that this knowledge is kind of from the inside out. Our entire reality is an expression of what we're experiencing inside, what we believe, what we know to be true. And all of these things that we know to be true, as I was saying at the beginning of this interview, I questioned because I realized that I didn't agree with any of those things that society or even history was telling me that I was supposed to be. So when you get to that point, all of that it starts to dissolve. You begin to deconstruct it. And so it really raises the question, well, what's the purpose? Like, I can't be the only one that has come to this question or this resolution of these things. You know, what's the purpose of creating a system? And I really do feel that in some way it is a control or a slowing down of some sort of the evolution or awareness of that consciousness.
So it's like a stifling.
Yes, there is. I believe, and you know, we see in many different sectors of what make up our reality, benefits of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at the pharmaceutical industry, we look at, how education is, we look at the history, the specific way that history is taught. So many things don't quite make sense. And so, you know, why is that? More of us should question. And when you go down that rabbit hole, that's the one you really want to go into, because you begin to look behind the illusion of what you thought was real. That's how I got to these experiences myself. And that would be the invitation. The most empowering invitation is for you to find your truth in your world. I found mine, and mine might not match yours.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to find your own, however way that you can.
Right. What is draconian, though? Because I feel like there are different definitions out there of what that means or who they are.
What is the what? I'm sorry.
You know, like draconian rule.
Draconian. Okay. So there's a couple parts to this. The draconians are said to be the very original bloodline. And they are descendants of archons, which were the first to have bred life from Sophia, from the origin, from that consciousness that decided to become individual from source, is now breathing life, they say in the story, that bred life into these beings that were the archons that then decided to utilize this life force, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing is, when separation expresses itself as separate from source, that's the beginning, that's the origin of the rejection of consciousness. Okay, so anytime we feel separate or disconnect, in a sense, we are rejecting our consciousness. We're rejecting the fact that we are a fractal of that infinite consciousness, because it's in your design. It's what you are. You cannot ignore that fact. So these draconians are a manifestation of that rejected consciousness, in a sense, and they play out that role by carrying out parasitic it's parasitic consciousness, in other words.
Right.
That means that they need to feed off something else in order to sustain themselves. And so historically, we've seen that, right? We've seen that they manipulate the souls. They manipulate consciousness. Certain specific bloodlines were designed and created to carry out certain things in history.
And how do we break free from that?
How do we break free from that? Well, this is where we start talking about the deprogramming of DNA. We look at epigenetics. Epigenetics teaches us that we are a product of our environment, and we can change our genetic information. We're not tied to everything that grandpa and grandpa has done in their lifetime. We can change it by making tweaks in our life. So that means that we're programmable. And that works both ways. It works for the good people and the bad people, right? The ones that have your best intention and don't. The thing is to
program yourself in a way.
You can absolutely program yourself. And so the purpose is that we deprogram all of those false programs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this kind of draconian rule, which is interesting because anatomically our bodies, when we're gestating in the womb, when we first start and the life starts to create in the womb, it looks like a tadpole. It's the first stage of creation is that reptilian. It has this reptilian form. The first part of the brain to create is the reptilian brain, the reptilian part of the brain. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. And in a lot of lore and stories, folkloric stories around the world, the reptilians have been held in a very, very specific way. To show the beginning of consciousness, of knowledge, of wisdom, the origin of that, and then it was evolving from there. So it's very interesting. We see these kinds of depictions historically in a lot of different areas in our life. So this draconian rule speaks to that. To me, they are an actual race. They are an embodiment of consciousness, but it also is, in a sense, almost like a metaphor of the rejection of consciousness, which is a natural expression, okay? And that expression can be whether it's the dark government or yourself hating yourself. So this is where we bridge the gap, okay, of what we're experiencing externally. If you understand that you are the master of your body and your mind, you can take control. You can even break the contractual agreements that you have with these extraterrestrials and end contact, end trauma, end that kind of work. My agreements to experience the hybridization program were made at an earlier time, maybe not even this lifetime, right? Those agreements that are made from a time when I was probably not conscious.
But couldn't you say, why did I make that agreement in the past lifetime?
Absolutely. And I did. I was like, what's wrong with me? And in a way, it's like, to me, I feel like and this is why I think experiencers are so important, because it's not everyone that remembers their contact. I mean, my memory of the contact was absolutely vivid. I mean, I woke up with psychic abilities. You don't hear that story necessarily every day. So it's important for those that have those experiences to speak up and share that, because it's almost with the story, you're lifting the veil of an unseen world that it would redefine the meaning of life, the meaning of yourself, of your expression here. So I think it's valuable. It's really important to share that. What makes it really interesting is that, you recognize that you're not the body, you're not the experiences that you have. You're here to be of service, which I've recognized. And that's why I speak so openly, even if people, can criticize or say something strange about it. I understand, trust me. I was in that in the beginning, but you got to do your research. And that's something you can't be lazy if you're going to be looking at these things. A lot of people, they don't take the time to read the books and research and try to figure out and educate themselves. Yeah. And that's where what causes fear is the unknown. So if we, go ahead, Alan.
Oh, well, I was going to ask, when you're not alone, when you are with other people who've had similar experiences, how helpful is that for you?
Well, in the very beginning, it was incredibly helpful. When the first time that I went to a support group, it was like incredible to hear someone else confirm things, mm-hmm. things that are tiny little details that you would never think anyone would acknowledge. My first time in a support group, I was sharing the story of seeing their advanced consoles that they have with these incredibly advanced, beautiful, I love design. So I these incredibly designed holograms of the universe that they use to navigate. And so but there was another person there that had seen the exact same thing, and they drew it. They drew what they saw, and it was the same thing that I saw. So when you see that, it really confirms you. You really understand, God, I'm really not crazy. You think maybe there's always the question, and I am very skeptical, and I always take moments to question myself, to check myself and be like, Geraldine, are you crazy? And, the thing is that really helps you. It helps you integrate your experience. And we're also kind of learning about the phenomena because people are seeing technologies. You're seeing what's being done, the procedures that are being done on you. You're seeing the tools that are being utilized. You're seeing the spacecraft. So there's a lot of value in connecting with experiencers and contactees.
Well, what tools can people use at home to start undoing that contract, and just people who've not had these type of experiences use to get themselves to a higher place? And I've been meaning to ask you, what is that place called ascension? What is that end? Is that an end goal, or is it just one more step along the way?
I love this question. And what I think ascension is, I used to think that it was an end goal. I used to think that we needed to reach that Bodic state, that,
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what I realized in my journey and myself, taking myself to that Bodic state,
Mm-hmm.
what is that state? Meditating up to 8 hours a day, okay, some days. You become one, you accept powerfully every aspect of yourself on such a powerful level that there is no denial, there's no rejection, there's no shame, there's no lies, there's no fear of yourself. And I think that opens up your ability to see yourself as something more than just physical. You begin to notice the connections to an unseen world, the conscious, the subconscious mind. All of that begins to come up, and you start to clean it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. I didn't receive training for that. That's something that I organically came into. And later on, it's something that I didn't know other people were doing. And when I read the story of Buddha, I realized, okay, he knows, he had gone through that process. I'm not saying that any certain religion has the entire truth. It doesn't, right? But we take from all these wisdoms, these schools of thoughts, and we learn. And the only way you're going to know and recognize that is by experiencing it yourself. So you have to do the work. You have to deprogram yourself from all of those false beliefs. You have to meet your fears literally in the face. You have to experience them. And I think that for me was the entryway. I went through my entire life and I healed all of the trauma that I had all my life up until that moment. So it was a blank slate. So when I came into these questions of interdimensional contact, extraterrestrials, the hybridization program, I knew that there was more. I knew that my job was not to get stuck in the trauma of that and be like, oh my God, I'm a victim, but to question, further, what is that? What did we need the hybridization for?
Right.
Why isn't anyone talking about why we're being utilized for the hybridization program? So it's important that we have those conversations. And for healing, the biggest tool for me was the meditation and complete authenticity, complete genuine expression of who you are. Find out who you are, and don't stop until you reach the complete truth. And it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. Even now it continues.
But if you reach the complete truth, doesn't that mean there is an end game, or no?
No. This is the thing. What I realized is after getting to one truth, it would expand into another.
I see. Yeah.
The problem is that the levels are so infinite. Okay. And I've journeyed in my regressions. I saw the universe, the construct of the universe, how it works, how we function. When you even get to that level, our human minds would not be able to comprehend, because we live in this 3-dimensional plane. First, get past the illusion that you're living in right now, and then you can begin to explore the universe. But you're never going to find the truth, because there is no such thing as an ultimate truth. we are simply experiencing polarity. We experience the light, we experience the dark. The idea of placing judgment on that is a limitation,
Mhm.
which is an illusion, you know. So don't get stuck in that illusion. You will never get anywhere if you do that. You just have to understand that it's all experiences, and that's how you can get as far as possible, is by trying to look at things from that way.
Yeah, I think that if you were uh, an addict or alcoholic, right, and you use or you drink, and you are that kind of person that has this idea that there is this ultimate state, right? You might think, oh my God, I found it. This is like the easiest way to get there. Why am I doing all this work? And I think that that's actually very true. And I think people get there and they think, well, I have to stay here. You know, this is the place. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? And then, you know, the whole cycle of addiction begins.
Exactly. The thing is, it's like, and I realized that concept is very damaging. It was damaging to me because I keep getting to like these high points in my life,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yet I'm unhappy and things are not working. I mean, I'm not the millionaire. I don't have the enlightenment. What happened? What did I do wrong? So you begin to realize, like, evolution and ascension. What is
Mhm.
ascension? Ascension means rising, right? It's your frequency. What is frequency? Your entire body, your entire human expression is a vibrational frequency.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you are more electrical than you are physical. We're a charge. We're in a charge of energy. So when that charge becomes weakened and depressed and empty and negates its own consciousness, it becomes weak. When it expands and when it becomes aware of itself, it
Mhm.
becomes an expansive, a powerful charge. This is scientifically proven on many different ways. A lot of people have researched how the body emits this incredible energetic field. And so this also speaks to your health, your well-being, your mental state, and how you're going to be producing in your world. So we are much more in charge and generators of our reality than anything else. And I mean, we just look at how consciousness works. When you observe consciousness, it begins to change immediately. The moment you're aware of it, something will change. So that's how we are as well. When we begin to observe ourselves, our emotion, we begin to shift and change. And so what ascension is the shift of that vibrational frequency.
Mhm.
When you're depressed, your wavelength is heavy, it's slower, right? Because you're at the fear, you're at the root chakra. If
Mhm.
you start to raise and clean up all those programs, you start getting to the higher chakras, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and you activate even the higher chakras up to the 13th. This is Each one of those chakras is a layer. It's an overlay that we are all interconnected into. And so, I speak about this only because I can see it. I have the ability of seeing the multidimensional body. And so pranic healing, quantum, all these little healing modalities started to make sense when I was able to see, because I could see why they're moving energy, why they're saying that there's meridians in the body.
Is that like a synesthete?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
But what you're doing is, you are raising the frequency of the body. So the more that you deprogram toxic programs and things that
Mhm.
don't serve you, this is how you shift your frequency.
Yeah.
And so you become more expansive, more healing, more of that creative life force, which is what you're designed to do.
Right.
Not necessarily with a partner, just in yourself, in your body, you have
Well,
creative
yeah, the subconscious mind is very powerful,
incredibly powerful.
extraordinarily powerful. And even if somebody is aware that they have to reprogram their subconscious mind, because it's operating constantly, whether you want it to or not, it's not an easy process. Sometimes it takes uh, you know um, traumatic moments in our lives that can change it, but that doesn't always work. You can't rely on that, and you do have to do the work to try to change your, I guess, frequency might be another way of putting that, because if you're reprogramming your consciousness, then you're opening up to a higher frequency. But I think for me, a key component to that is gratitude. Just having a sense of gratitude, even for like the littlest everyday things, sometimes if that's all you have, it's for me, it's essential. It keeps me much more grounded than I was pre, working on my stuff me,
Yes, that's so beautiful, and you're so right. I mean, I as an entrepreneur, I read so many books about people becoming successful, and one of the things they say is to have gratitude,
Mhm.
for the things that you have. But just having that gratitude, what happens in the body is complete acceptance. You're accepting, and that is that flow that allows you to really have this clear mind and not get stuck in things that are stagnating your energy and your creative life force.
Mhm.
So it's a really powerful practice and so simple, and yeah, there's so much to talk. I mean, we could talk for hours about that because there's so
Yeah.
many little parts to that are both biological, chemical, and physical and emotional that play a huge role in just gratitude, that are
Oh,
so important for us.
yeah, it's all about balance. So for those who are listening and can call in, the Paranormal Radio app hotline is 855-472-5483 or 85 KGRA live. You can call in, ask Geraldine your questions. And I'm going to take the first call right here and right now, and that is Ron from Minnesota. Ron, how are you?
Hey, Alan, how you doing? Sorry, I missed last week, man. I'm so glad I'm feeling better this week. But
Yeah, thanks for calling in.
wanted to get in and call in real quick and say hi to Geraldine. I did watch the show, the seating, extraordinary seating, or I can't remember the exact title of it, but the one you're talking about. And I had a hard time watching it first time through. It took me like 3 times to watch it. The one woman that's a narrator on there at the beginning where she's telling her story, um, to me, she has a weird vibe about her when I'm watching the show. I don't know, maybe it's just a show or maybe it's just me imagining it. Anyway, beyond all that, you mentioned 5 years old was your first experience you remember. Was that a preconditioning time? And then with that, when do they release you or do they still contact you?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for calling in. It's great to have you on here. How did they, the first contact at 5 years old was implantation of technology to monitor the body for when it was prepared for insemination, which came years later at the age of 16, was the first time I was inseminated. So, it basically does change the body little by little during that time. And pardon me, what was your second question?
The when they released you or are you still in contact with them? I know you're helping other people deal with their experience, and I didn't know if you're still getting information from your contacts or are you completely did they abandon you and just let you go? How does
Yes.
it work?
Yeah, no, I get your question. I broke my contracts with them. Absolutely.
Okay,
I
I think
be
you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, when I became aware of what was actually happening, I decided to cancel and end those contracts completely. But I was still experiencing other things with the terrestrial program. And it's a little bit different, a little bit trickier. The last time I had contact was last year after a conference. So quite recent, really. And little by little, I keep breaking those contracts and cutting off those ties. I have a very specific way of handling channeling and any kind of information that comes through me. I really believe that for me, my only communication comes from my higher self. So I don't want to receive any communication or channeling from any kind of other being, because I think a lot of mind control happens. There's a tremendous mind control opportunity there. And it's happened. The opportunity to channel information from certain councils and groups, all of that has presented itself throughout the last couple years. But what I recognized intuitively was that a lot of this could be very manipulated, just like Alan was saying at the very beginning of this show, right? We have to be careful. We have to understand and be discerning with what information we're accepting. So that's something that I really adopted really strongly, and I don't connect or channel any information for them. or anyone.
Thank you very much again for all your work that you do. Thank you, Ellen, for a great show and a great guest. And thank you, Bill, for the call. And we'll catch you guys next time.
All right. Thanks, Ron. It's good to hear from you. All right. So, yeah, there's obviously a lot of curiosity about this. But I have to say that I think there are a lot of people that have compassion for what you've been through. How do you deal with people who are cruel, who do troll you? Do you just ignore them? What's the best advice?
For me, I really look at them with a lot of compassion again, and I don't blame them for having skepticism or questioning what's happening. I was that same person. If you talked to me 10 years ago and you talked to me about aliens, like I wouldn't be able to meet you there, because it was a totally different understanding. And we never stop learning. I'm learning now, continue learning. I don't know everything. And what I say, I can't say it's true, because what is true? Like I'm saying, we're just an expression of this polarity, of this creative energy and destructive energy. Okay, so in that, when you look at things that way, you can't say there's only one truth. Everything is possible. So, if that person has that reality, absolutely respect them. And I really don't take it on me personally or emotionally when they speak it out. Everybody has the right of speech. So if you are experiencing trolling from someone, that's one thing I really suggest to experiencers that are coming out with their story. Create a very strong foundation. You need to love yourself. You need to know who you are and work on that. That takes dedication and time to really know and accept yourself first, because a lot of people go out talking about these things and they don't accept themselves. And then it's a trigger, it's a problem. And then that can take you down a really toxic road, which is completely unnecessary.
So you're saying that they're not prepared, they're not ready.
Not prepared. That's right. When you don't even accept yourself, or you're still doubting and questioning, you're an open opportunity to get hurt, because there's a lot invested in preserving and protecting yourself and your beliefs.
Yes.
And that's a very dangerous place to be. You don't want to be there. You always want to be ready to accept, and not accept, but be open to all possibilities as truth.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely applicable to any number of issues that one may be going through. Again, if it was addiction, most people go into anonymous programs, and at least for a good portion of that early time, they don't share that with other people. They have that support group, and they start learning how to accept themselves as they are, and how to start making steps forward. And you learn language, right? Like how to communicate. And so if you want to just share your truth, but you don't have the vocabulary to explain it to other people, or even to respond to attacks, if it comes to that, then yes, I think you are setting yourself up to be hurt. And it's good to be vulnerable, but not if you're, like you said, not grounded. I think that's a good way to put it.
Absolutely. I agree. Educate yourself, get informed, reach out to other support groups first, practice on them, because sometimes some of these experiencers, they have a lot of experience, years already of dealing with backlash and, criticism and stuff like that. So number one thing, as I was saying, the foundation of yourself, your understanding of yourself is going to be the strongest tool, backbone for anything in life, anything that you encounter.
Yeah. So what happens when you find your way to raise your frequency? You're able to do this to some degree. Is that place of ascension on this plane as we know it, as you and I are sitting here talking to each other? Or is there really a higher place, post-mortem, just beyond here?
question, because it really helps dispel the idea that there is somewhere we're trying to reach or something that's outside of us that we can't reach. In
Mm-hmm.
reality, we are the creators of our experience in the physical and out of the physical, which is why I really try to empower people and educate people on the fact that becoming conscious doesn't just happen in your everyday life. Yes, we have to do that. And that's a whole journey that we got to take. But even in dream time, even through astral work, we have to begin to train ourselves to become aware. And that's what my extraterrestrial contact taught me, was that, because I had become aware in the physical, it opened me to allow myself to remember fully that contact experience, because now you're kind of operating on a whole different level of consciousness. So, and I hear that all time and time again from other experiencers that have fully conscious experiences. They're working on that aspect of unlocking those parts of themselves. So even in death, I had a near-death experience 2 years ago. And in that near-death experience, I was being brought into this tunnel of light. And as I'm being brought in, my family starts to form themselves around me, and I'm being questioned. Are you ready to go to this next, place, or are you ready to stay?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that I manifested that experience, that near-death experience, in order to learn that I had yet to fully accept my quote unquote mission, or what I had chosen to experience in this lifetime. So when I kind of dissolved that fear that I had, I was immediately brought back into my body. So what that shows me, and I've heard this with other people that have experienced near-death experiences, it's almost as if there's a veil, that is a very thin veil between life and death, that it is simply an interdimensional aspect of us. We are literally going out of our bodies into the higher realms of ourselves, right? The layers of the bodies are 7, which are connected to the chakra system. And then above that, we have our the astral body, the Akashic records, the spirit, and the soul. And all of those layers are going around this planet, around the orb in which we live on, the planet Earth. They're also interconnected with one another. We are interconnected on those planes.
Yeah.
So, in other words, we're more like an organism than just an individual person or individual even consciousness. We are one whole organism. So when we talk about getting to these deaths, for example, all that's happening is this energy. It never dies. It just transfers. It's just being reabsorbed into one of those planes of consciousness.
Well, you mentioned the Buddha earlier. I mean, he was able to get there and come back.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's great that you brought that up, because also if we start to study some of ancient ruins in history in Egypt, death was highly, highly respected, revered as a portal to the unseen world, to the next dimension. And it wasn't as a practice of, finite, you're dead, you're gone. It was, you are eternal, you are infinite, and you're just experiencing the second phase or the second opportunity.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is that we are like a web. If you visualize a web, you right now in this human body, you're at the center of that web because it's aware. It's aware of itself in that moment, and it's aware of its environment. But you also have the ability to access other parts of yourself. When we go into hypnosis, into regression, we kind of begin to access memories of our past lives. You visualize yourself as King Arthur or something like that. You are literally accessing a fragment of yourself, which is an archetype, that is embedded and programmed within what we can call the matrix, or the idea of what we see as reality. Okay. And all of us have those parts of us. All of us, men and women, have all those parts, these archetypes of ourselves that we experience. So any part of that web that is aware, that is conscious of itself, in dream time, you go out into astral level, that part lights up, that part is aware. Now you die. Now that part is aware. But wherever you are, just like the universe, there's no reference point. It's just one point that continuously looks like it's expanding. We are like that too. We are those different points of reference that wherever it is conscious or aware of that consciousness is what is in control, per se, of that.
Well, you mentioned a tunnel. And then I remembered at the end of Amazing by Aerosmith, the line that they leave you with is, remember, the light at the end of the tunnel may be you.
Oh, that's interesting. I never heard that song. Okay, that's a
Wait, did
very.
you say you've never heard that song?
I'm really
Oh
bad
my
with.
gosh. Okay, when we're done,
Yeah. Okay.
everybody out there who've not heard Amazing by Aerosmith, please go on YouTube and look them up.
Okay.
I'm probably dating myself, but hey, they're classic though. It's such a beautiful song. It really is. And actually that song was written about because Aerosmith as a group recovered together. I think they were using heroin, and they decided together, which is such a rare thing,
Yeah.
for people to say, let's quit together, let's go to rehab together. And then I think that was in the 80s sometime.
Wow.
And they've stayed sober all this entire time. And so that song and a couple of others off of that album relate to that recovery process.
Wow, that really speaks to the song and the lyrics, because he's absolutely right. I mean, when you die, you meet yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You are everything. Like, you are the universe. You are whatever is out there that we are not seeing, that we don't even understand.
Yeah.
Part of you. Like, the way I look at life now is that we're not just this physical body, and especially in times like we're going through right now,
Mm-hmm.
where we're somehow being attacked psychologically to think that the body that's it. It really helps to understand your multidimensionality and the power that you have over creation and healing and balance of yourself in what you're experiencing. The more of us that recognize that, the quicker we can get through any of these kinds of global problems that we have.
Absolutely. And I also interpreted that. I think I like that interpretation as well. And I guess I'm probably saying the same thing. But I see it as them saying, what are you chasing? Like, what are you going after for? It's all right here.
It is. Yes.
And then, but it's just a matter of accessing it. And through subconscious work, you can do that. But I mean, you speak about changing or using DNA technology, right? We haven't spent that much time on that, and we only have a little bit of time left. But can you introduce us to what that means? Because it's a very broad-sounding concept.
Sure. So very briefly, I'll just quickly go through epigenetics, right? This is the best way to explain it. So epigenetics, we're looking at how DNA is being written. Okay, the protein is written by those sugars, right? And so what's happening is that the DNA that's being written is being written by information that is fed into by your environment. This is total layman's term, very super simplified.
Yeah.
But so that means everything that you're eating, everything that you're putting into your body, everything that you're feeling, trauma that you've experienced. Now, what happens is that within your DNA, you're holding, let me go back one step.
Sure.
We have mitochondrial and nuclear DNA. Mitochondrial DNA comes down from your mother's lineage. Okay, what's interesting about that is that what we're looking at is that it's basically an aggregate photocopy of all of those genes, and all that information of those generations are in your DNA. You're holding on to all of that, which is also why a lot of extraterrestrial contact is remembered or recalled more readily through the maternal lineage. So, for example, my family, all the women in my family have had contact and participation in that. Now, my father is also another contactee, but that's another thing. We're talking about resonance of frequency and why these families are brought together. I can talk to you about that some other time. But with epigenetics, so the information that's being fed, all the trauma that your great-grandmother went through, it comes up in the life of your mother, and it's going to come up in your life. And so what's interesting is that we not only do we connect with relationships and people, places, things that resonates those triggers in your body, chemically, physically, emotionally, but we're manifesting and creating those scenarios in our life because we are playing out the programs that we know, right? We were raised thinking certain ways. When you're a child, from the birth to the age of 7 is when we are programmed since the womb to learn how to feel, how to discern, how to look at life. how to experience things and respond to things. So that's incredibly important. So whatever you experienced in those moments, whether it's really traumatic, and you tell me if you've ever seen an adult that has it figured out, right? There's no such thing. So we are all a product of these, unfinished understanding of each oneself.
So,
So
Geraldine, are you saying you don't have it all figured out?
no, I definitely will say I don't have it figured out. No, definitely. But so we're a product of that. And so what we need to do is find ourselves with all that programming, with all those emotional, very heavy programs, because it's like a filing cabinet. When we hear something and we have a trigger, we go to our filing cabinet, and anything that matches that is what we're going to be applying. So it's very hard sometimes to break those patterns. So it takes time. You need to be very patient with yourself and be completely ready to be authentic and not afraid of the unknown, because you're creating new neural pathways. That means you're creating new unknown scenarios for yourself. You're teaching yourself all over again.
Yeah.
So you need to be kind to yourself and nurturing and patient during that process. But the point is to deprogram, to destroy all of those programs that don't work, that don't even, you're not your mother, you're not that, but you will be experiencing those same experiences if you don't break those patterns. So this is what I work with on a daily basis. And time again, it's showing itself, the evidence that we are a product of our, what we know, what we've learned, all our programming. So it's important to learn how to deprogram that by doing some introspection and some work. I have a lot of free content on my YouTube channel you guys can check out if you have some questions. But I'm here available to work one-on-one too.
Yeah, you're pretty regularly posting on YouTube, correct?
Yes. I took a little vacation the past couple months, but I'm going to be right back in there starting next week. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is that helpful for you too, getting feedback from people?
Yes. I love connecting with people and hearing about what they need, what would be helpful. There's so much to talk about. Just me and you have touched so many different topics here, and it's such a complex topic, so we really are relearning how to live, how to be as humans. We're creating a new human. And for this time, this incredible shift that we're all experiencing, this reset of the world in a sense, we're going to just come into a lot of hardship, probably financially, economically in the world. And it's going to really put into question systems right now and what we're used to, what we're comfortable with. So
do you think I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that we're going to have to need some tools to help us. And it's on a whole different level. It's more than just psychological, and it's emotional. It's support for that, because I know a lot of trauma has happened as a result of, everything that's happened over the past couple of months. So, we need to support ourselves more than ever now.
Yeah. So you think that we are in a period of transition?
Major. I think this is just the beginning. Just what we went through over the past 3-4 months is going to be the beginning of a new reset for many, many different things. And I think we're just going to start to feel the repercussion economically of that starting in the beginning of this new year. So I think it's a time to prepare. And how do we prepare is to pull and train ourselves not to respond from a place of fear, but we need to educate ourselves and understand what this physical body can do and is, becoming more self-sustaining, becoming less dependent on systems that really don't help our well-being on many different levels. So we got to inform ourselves on what those are, and just little by little start taking care of ourselves, disconnecting from that system that may be toxic sometimes.
Geraldine, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me, and hope to see you guys soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was definitely insightful. And if people want to find out more, go to bayareameditation.com, or you can go to hybridmother.com as well. And as Geraldine said, she has a YouTube channel, so go check that out as well. Geraldine, I wish you the absolute best, and hopefully I'll see you around the paranormal world soon.
Same here. Take care.
All right. Take care. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio, live every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard time in our new slot here. We're just settling in. It feels good. Thank you for joining everybody tonight. And of course, follow on Facebook, Paranormal Now Radio, or on Instagram at Paranormal Now, and on Twitter, Paranormal_Now. And you've got to check out KGRA's Facebook page as well. We have so many new shows and podcasts that have joined. So every night there's something new and interesting going on. This is Alan B. Smith. Once again, thank you all. And thank you to Bill Skywatcher, our amazing producer. He's been amazing in this transition to StreamYard and to this new time slot. And what's going on with the station, so much credit goes to Bill. Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate the work that you put into this, and you support me here on Paranormal Now. Until next time, live in the mystery.